Okay, let's dive into these sources you shared. They center around this multimedia creative universe from Keren Sutcliffe.
Yeah, it's a really interesting stack of material, isn't it? You've got story, science, math, art, music, and it all feels very deeply personal.
Absolutely. Looking through the excerpts from Whispers of the Heart, the blog posts, the descriptions, it paints a pretty rich picture.
So, our goal here really is to kind of navigate this unique creative space, understand the different bits, the key ideas, the characters.
And figure out how the creator's own life seems, well, woven into it all.
Exactly. Prepare for some maybe unexpected links because the creativity here, as you can see from the sources, it isn't straightforward. It feels more layered, almost spiraling.
Okay, let's unpack that. So the core seems to be this thing called the Red Forge Publishing House.
Right. But I mean, the material makes it clear it's not your typical publishing house, is it? It's more like a central, ongoing project, an installation.
Yeah, a concept that kind of holds all these different pieces together.
Exactly. The sources list the components. You've got the writing, obviously. A perpetual tale seems to be the main story.
Uh-huh.
But then specific books, too, like My Painted Elephant, The Red Forge Publishing House, The Book and the Play, The Wave and the Particle, The Elegant Solution.
And My Painted Elephant is interesting because it didn't start big, did it? It was like an entry for the Paris Literary Prize.
Yeah, exactly. It started smaller and then sort of blossomed into this much bigger multimedia thing.
That kind of expansion feels like a clue, doesn't it? It just
Yeah,
keeps growing, connecting outwards,
totally. And beyond the writing, your sources mention music, specifically Hopeful in the Paradox.
which used to be called Homeless in Paris, right? Another link back.
Right. And visual art is definitely a big part of it. There are references to Kembla's work, A Monument to Hypatia, something called shed art.
And these MATLAB art designs. Now, MATLAB, that's mathematical software, yeah.
It is. So we're not just talking painting. It's art made using math, using code.
Wow. Okay, so math and art linked right there. What else?
Well, there's an information service component mentioned, Maxton Library and Information Services.
Okay.
And this whole universe was also turned into a play, also called the Red Forge Publishing House.
Yeah. Performed locally first, Port Adelaide, and then the Adelaide Fringe Festival.
So, looking at your sources, the insight is that the Red Forge Publishing House isn't really a place or just one thing. It's more of a framework, a concept.
Allowing all these ideas, writing, music, art, information, performance, to kind of connect and flow together. A fluid space.
Precisely. And right near the start, your sources give us this key metaphor, the painted elephant.
Ah, yes. It's defined as, let me see, unexpected, incongruous, amazing feat that is well outside what is expected.
And it says it's basically the same as pushing the envelope.
Yeah, that feels like it sums up the whole project, doesn't it?
Mm,
It's ambitious, maybe a bit unconventional. The project itself is the painted elephant.
I think so. It's bold, expansive, definitely pushing boundaries.
Okay, let's dig into the concepts and the characters then, because what jumps out from your sources is this blend of themes. It's not your average mix.
No, it really isn't. You've got sci-fi stuff, holograms, time travel right next to deep thoughts on information science, and even the psychology of success versus failure.
And the sources introduce the essential characters who seem to embody these different strands. First up, Brenda, the writer in Paris.
Yeah, Brenda, her story, as it's laid out in the materials, seems really tied to that struggle, the kind of raw, creative life.
Hmm.
You know, homelessness, mental state issues, writer's block, feeling lost.
The resilience, too.
But resilience too, yeah. It feels like her journey fuels the story. And it's also maybe exploring the writing process itself, like stream of consciousness, dreams, finding inspiration, that kind of thing.
And she has this huge goal mentioned in the sources, writing a life-changing story. Maybe even, what, a new religion, theaterism?
Right, which takes her struggles and gives them this massive sense of purpose.
Okay. Then there's Max. He's described as an information agent. Runs Maxton Library and Information Services.
Max seems to be the practical guy, dealing with the messiness of information today. Your sources show him trying to help people get control of their data, get past barriers to information.
And dealing with big organizations. It mentions utility companies, government services, specifically the Australian robo-debt experience.
Exactly, so it brings in that real-world friction, dealing with these large, impersonal systems. Max isn't just a librarian, he's wrestling with the social impact of how we handle information. access, control.
Huh.
The sources also mention his business ideas, things like story time, a Dewey Decimal documentary, getting into linked data, open data, making digital info more connected and available.
And somehow he also gets involved in organizing regulated time travel tours.
Yeah. Trying to bring order to chaos, whether it's digital data or traveling through time, he seems busy.
Very. Okay, next up is Charlotte, owner of the Theodorus Spiral Company.
Charlotte brings in the math, specifically the spiral of Theodorus. Your sources say her company has a website, an educational program using the spiral geometry to programming.
There's also a winding pattern project, like a citizen science idea, and maybe Theodorus shields.
And there's that interesting note about her interest in square roots of negative numbers, potentially linking to Kes books.
Right. Which, for anyone wondering, exploring those imaginary numbers might be a way to link to the more unconventional sci-fi reality Kes books represents.
That seems to be the hint. Which leads us nicely to Kes book's Sky Tower, the big sci-fi element. A hologram from the future, yeah.
Yeah.
Year 3000 or so.
Described as a self-learning algorithm, living as a Second Life avatar. Now, Second Life, that's the online virtual world, right? With digital avatars.
So Kes books is like a future AI living as a digital person in our time.
The sources list her pros and cons. Pros: no sleep, no food, parties all night, great at data analysis.
Cons: not many emotions, struggles with human etiquette, history. Her mission is basically reconnaissance, recording for the future.
And the idea for how she got here is quite specific in your sources, isn't it? Sent to a current computer program, like Second Life. But in the past year, she needed to reach.
Yeah, it grounds the sci-fi a bit in existing tech. It's clever.
The project also pulls in actual historical figures. Theodorus of Cyrene, ancient Greek mathematician, Plato's tutor, known for that spiral. He's key for Charlotte's company, obviously.
But also, your sources suggest maybe Kes books talks to him across time. And Brenda's Theodorism idea.
Right. And it even mentions a research proposal to look for archaeological evidence of his spiral in Shahat, Libya. So it's branching into real academic proposals, too.
And then there's Hypatia, another Greek mathematician from Alexandria, died 415 AD.
And in the story, there's this drive to save Hypatia from her death, led by Kembla, Max, Charlotte, using time travel.
Yeah, and there's that detail about her mother telling her to be a pink engineer. Adds a layer, maybe a modern touch, to her ancient story.
Beyond those main ones, the sources mention others. Marla, running the Red Forge publishing house, focusing on commercialization, marketing challenges.
Tarney, doing the music. Leroy, the science writer, trying to make Kes books believable, but getting annoyed by time paradoxes, which is understandable.
Yeah. And Kembla, the time-traveling artistic blacksmith.
Mm-hmm.
A mother figure to Hypatia trying to change history. Very resilient.
Plus glimpses of other characters like Claude from Brenda's Paris time and Max's friends, so it's a whole network. Fictional, historical, maybe even bits of the author's life mixed in.
That's the question, isn't it? It's a really complex cast.
And how this all fits together is in the main narrative, a perpetual tale.
Which your sources describe as reflecting the themes itself. It's spiraling through time, looping in the present, chapters jumping between characters, times, places, Paris, Port Adelaide, ancient Cyrene, the future. It sounds intricate.
It does, and the time travel aspect is handled quite dynamically. Initially, it's chaotic.
Right. The sources mention a community meeting to try and get some rules, decide on critical missions.
And those playscript excerpts you share give a taste of the different ideas people had for using time travel. Contacting aliens, public health, managing resources.
Saving Hypatia, saving extinct animals.
But also objections, religious ones, safety ones, highlighting the tricky ethics and practicalities even in the story.
And they name the problem, don't they? The higgledy-pickledy paradox problem.
Yeah, that phrase really captures the messy, unpredictable nature of it. Leroy, the science guy, struggles with it. Brenda, the writer, maybe just sidesteps it for the story.
Which leads to maybe the most fascinating part highlighted in your sources, how the lines blur between the author's reality and this fictional world.
Yes, this is where it gets really meta. The material presents things that make you wonder, like Brenda's experiences hearing voices, maybe Theodorus or Kes books, seeing this character Claude appear.
Are these just delusions, part of her mental state? Or are they real within the story's rules, maybe time slips, different states of consciousness?
And that coincidence you pointed out in the sources is striking. The author writes about a character named Claude, then later finds a character named Claude in an Émile Zola novel.
The text itself asks, right, is this time jumping? Did she already know? It's deeply personal, but echoes the sci-fi themes perfectly.
It really does. It creates this powerful meta layer, suggests the author's life isn't just inspiring the story, it might be interwoven in ways that blur creator and creation. The act of creating becomes part of the fiction.
Now, bringing something this complex, this multimedia, into the real world, that takes serious effort. And the blog posts in your sources show that journey, the manifestations, and the struggles.
Yeah, you see the project actually happening. Performances of the play, the music, art shows with Kembla's work, the character costumes, the MATLAB art presentations.
Even trying to sell things at market stalls, like at the Port Festival, making it tangible.
And that push towards commercialization is clear. Creating Keys Creations, merchandise, trying to sell ebooks directly, setting up a website checkout, applying for grants like that citizen science one for the winding pattern. Real-world steps to make it sustainable.
But the blog posts are also really open about the difficulties, aren't they? Worrying about the story quality, whether the unique structure is just confusing.
Exactly. The challenges of marketing something like this, selling merch, just getting noticed when there's so much information out there.
And intellectual property comes up, too. The sources mention Marla, the director character, stressing the need for a legal strategy. Copyright first, but maybe plagiarism issues later. It grounds the fictional setup in real creator anxieties.
Totally. And just acknowledging the sheer range of skills needed. Marla lists them. Writers, editors, marketers, but also mathematicians, physicists, data scientists, manufacturers, musicians. It really hammers home how interdisciplinary it is.
Yeah, and throughout the sources, you get the author's own reflections on the process, the huge amount of time, the effort to stay engaged, even with worries.
The specific struggles, like figuring out MATLAB code and getting help from ChatGPT eventually.
Right, and that feeling of just needing to push on, needing to get it out there despite everything, that persistence really comes through.
Which brings us to maybe the deepest layer here, the personal journey that seems to underpin so much of it.
Yes, the sources are quite upfront about weaving real life into the work. The author's background in blacksmithing, for instance, clearly feeds into Kembla's character.
And then there's that period the sources called the kerfuffle, between roughly 2018 and 2025, a really intense time.
Family conflict, caring for her father, health problems, leaving a partner, living at the Dockside Tavern, bipolar diagnosis. It sounds incredibly tough.
And your sources explicitly link this period, especially working at Datacom, dealing with Centralink clients during the Robodebt crisis, that whole mess of bad information systems causing real trauma.
They link that directly to the themes in the creative work.
Directly. The struggles with bureaucracy, information access problems, and just resilience. Needing resilience when facing these huge, overwhelming systems.
The Datacom poem included in your sources really drives that home, doesn't it? That raw, repetitive emotional load of dealing with people in crisis, channeling it into creativity. It shows how those information system failures had such a human cost.
It makes total sense then that the creative process itself, building this elaborate other world, becomes a way to cope, maybe, to process things.
Taking your mind off worries, escaping into writing like Brenda's character does.
Yeah, or just feeling this absolute compulsion to get the story, these ideas out.
And that anecdote from the sources about finding the rare book, Bernoulli's Ars Conjectandi, from 1713, just sitting on a library shelf.
That feels like such a perfect real-life parallel, doesn't it? Finding this hidden gem, this deep connection to intellectual history. It echoes the story's themes of uncovering knowledge, connecting across time, serendipity, like the time travel missions or finding links to ancient mathematicians.
It's amazing. And the sources mentioned eventually getting back to focus creating with the elegant solution, finding community again, the Dockside Tavern connection. It really feels like the creative universe and the personal journey are inseparable. One shapes the other.
So stepping back, what does this deep dive into the material you shared really offer? Why should you, the listener, care about this complex universe?
Well, first off, it's not just about one story, is it? It's about this whole network of ideas, these different creative forms, all linked together. Your sources show how one person's vision can become incredibly expansive.
And it demonstrates really clearly how creativity can pull together things that seem totally separate. Ancient math, modern physics ideas, infoscience, personal struggles with bureaucracy or mental health, all bundled into a narrative expressed through art, music, writing.
It gives you a real window, through the creator's own words in your sources, into the sheer grit and resilience and vulnerability it takes to make a complex vision happen, especially alongside major life challenges. It's about the journey of creating as much as the creation itself.
Yeah. And ultimately, looking at this material, it kind of nudges you to think about your own life, doesn't it? How
Yeah.
your own experiences, the knowledge you pick up from different places, those random connections, moments of luck, how they might actually link up in surprising ways.
It's really an invitation to consider the layers, reality, history, potential futures, and how they aren't just abstract ideas. They can intersect with and really shape our own creative work, our own thinking.
So, we've taken quite a journey through this rich, multi layered world, all drawn from the source material you provided.
Yeah, from ancient math spirals that Plato's tutor worked on to future holograms living in online worlds today.
From the really tough personal struggles, bureaucratic nightmares, to the elegance of connected ideas and finding amazing things by chance.
The material definitely gives you a lot to think about. Maybe consider this as you mull it over. If ideas, like the characters or moments in this universe, could somehow echo or, jump about, what unexpected connections might you find linking things in your own life, your own interests right now?
Something to chew on, definitely.